The morning light slid gently across the suburban rooftops, brushing the shoulders of Amara Briggs, a black woman striding down the brick path with her 2 German shepherds, Chaos and Mercy. Nothing unusual. Just another early walk through a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. No sirens, no chaos, no orders to mobilize, just the breath of wild grass and the soft chorus of birds folded into the rhythm of steady footsteps. To anyone else, it was a simple morning stroll. But to Amara, a former Navy special operative recently transitioned out of years serving in unnamed battlefields, this was ritual, a recovery routine, a way to remember what it felt like to be a person again, not just a weapon trained for war. She had lived in places where silence could kill, where every footfall, every breath had to be precise, like military clockwork. But here, in this seemingly peaceful neighborhood, silence carried a different kind of threat, subtle, lingering, shaped like wary stares from porch chairs or the too careful body language of those who never voiced the question they were thinking. What is she doing here? She was used to those eyes, at the bank, at the gas station, at the vet clinic. Each time a quiet reminder that no matter how many years of elite training she had, no matter how many missions she had shouldered, here she was just a black woman with 2 large dogs in a neighborhood that prided itself on being safe. That morning, Amara had no idea she was about to become the center of a confrontation, not because she did anything wrong, but because she stood too tall to be ignored. And for some people, especially those used to wielding control through authority, not principle, that alone was enough to make her the problem. The early morning street was still laced with mist. A patrol car crept along the far side like a predator, catching the scent of something unfamiliar on its turf. Amara didn't change her pace. She didn't need to look to know the eyes from the driver's seat were sweeping over her. Slow, assessing, unapologetic. The first time the cruiser passed, she thought it might just be a routine patrol. The second time, when it stopped in a small pullout by the front lawns, she knew something was about to begin. Chaos and Mercy sensed it too. The 2 German shepherds, trained alongside her during her Navy years, slowed their steps, their eyes sharpened. No barking, no growling, just a steady gaze toward the patrol car, as if they understood the danger today didn't come from a distant war zone, but from the very heart of a neighborhood labeled peaceful. 2 officers stepped out. One tall and broad, Rainier, moved with the weight of someone used to giving orders without needing justification. The other, leaner, eyes sharp with suspicion, Rickson. Amara stopped, hands firm on both leashes, her voice steady as any other day. "Morning, officers." Rickson didn't reply. Rainier smirked. "Nice dogs. What breed are they?" The words sounded casual, almost friendly, but the look wasn't. It wasn't the look of someone who liked dogs. It was the look of someone gauging threat. "German, shepherds," Amara answered quietly. Rainier nodded slowly, his eyes drifting from her running shoes to the plain hoodie, and finally resting on her calm, unreadable face. "Military trained?" She didn't blink at the question. "Something like that." A beat of silence. Rickson stepped closer, his gaze shifting from Amara to Chaos. "They look a little too disciplined to just be pets, don't you think?" The air changed. This was no longer a conversation. It was a test. And Amara knew they weren't looking for answers. They were looking for a reason. She felt the faint shift in the leash, Chaos adjusting his weight, ready to react. She tightened her grip, not out of fear, but because she knew how quickly things could turn, especially when arrogance held a badge. "Just out for a walk," she said evenly. "Have a good day." She moved to continue. But Rainier stepped forward, blocking her path. His hand rested close to his weapon. Not drawn, but close enough to send a message. "Ma'am," Rainier said, "I'm going to need you to stop right there." "On what grounds?" Amara asked, not raising her voice, not stepping back. She stood her ground, legs braced like she had before breaching enemy doors. Rickson let out a thin laugh. "You know, people get nervous seeing big dogs like these in neighborhoods like this." Amara met his eyes, unflinching, a dry glint of irony in her gaze. then maybe it's not the dogs they're afraid of. The sentence landed like a slap. Quiet, precise, stinging. Not a shout, not a taunt, but both men clenched their jaws. Men like them weren't used to being challenged, especially not by a woman, especially not by a black woman who didn't flinch. Rickson crouched, hand reaching toward Chaos, a move that might seem harmless in another context, but here it was clear provocation. "Easy, boy." "I'm just saying hi," he murmured. Chaos didn't move, but his stare, unblinking, razor-sharp, erased any illusion of friendliness. It wasn't the look of a pet. It was the gaze of a trained partner reading danger. "Don't," Amara said. Her tone was soft, but the word hit like a command. Rickson pulled back. His expression hardened. "Is your dog aggressive, ma'am?" Renaer asked, hand still hovering near his belt. "Only when provoked," Amara answered. The breeze rustled the trees. The peaceful neighborhood now felt like a stage for a silent standoff. And in that moment, Amara knew this wasn't a routine. Stop. It was a declaration of dominance from men who thought their badges entitled them to suspicion, to intimidation. But they were wrong. She wasn't the kind to back down. Rickson's demeanor flipped like a coin. His face stayed calm, but his eyes shifted from inquisitive to alert, from banter to command. He glanced at Renaer, then spoke up. "Step away from the dogs. We're gonna need to check them." "Check them for what?" Amara asked, tightening her grip on the leashes. Her voice wasn't loud, wasn't sharp, but it was unmistakably clear. Renaer took a step forward, closing the gap to just a few feet. "Ma'am, I'm giving you a lawful order. You can either cooperate, or this gets difficult." "Then clarify your lawful reason," Amara replied, eyes fixed on the subtle movements of his hand, because walking two leashed dogs doesn't usually qualify as suspicious activity. Silence, tense like still water, waiting for a single pebble to shatter the surface. And the pebble was Rickson. He crouched, again reaching for Chaos, this time faster, rougher. "Come here, boy. Let me see if you're chipped." Chaos growled, low, deep, not loud, but heavy, like a warning. He took half a step forward, chest rising with tension. Amara stepped slightly back and gave a subtle hand signal, silent, precise, military. Chaos froze, but never looked away. "Back off," she said, staring Rickson down. "You're provoking him." Rickson yanked his hand back, but didn't retreat. Instead, he smirked and turned to Renaer. "She's being non-compliant. This could be a problem." Amara felt every nerve in her body tighten. She'd seen that look before, on battlefields in the eyes of young soldiers who mistook authority for a license to decide who lives and who doesn't. Renaer placed his hand on his gun. "Ma'am, leash control isn't enough. If your dogs pose a threat—" "Threat?" Amara cut in. "The only threat here is your escalating behavior." Renaer raised a brow. His voice dropped, laced with warning. "Are you refusing to follow orders?" "I'm refusing to surrender to abuse of power." The calm shattered, like glass beneath a hammer. Rickson drew his weapon, pointed it straight at Chaos. "Call off the dog now." Chaos bared his teeth and roared. Amara yanked the leash tight, shouting, "Do not shoot!" But Rickson wasn't listening. His hand shook, maybe from adrenaline, maybe from fear of being challenged by a black woman who wouldn't flinch. His finger hovered on the trigger. One twitch, and it would all spiral out of control. "Down!" Amara barked at Chaos. The moment the word left her mouth, she stepped in front of him. "Out of the way! I said, call it off!" Rickson shouted. "Then holster your weapon," she yelled back. Two men, one with a gun, one with a badge. But both, at that moment, were just men unraveling. A click. Renaer had drawn his taser. The nightmare had arrived. A quiet street, a peaceful morning, two obedient dogs. Now a battlefield born from paranoia and prejudice. Chaos growled again, frozen in place. Mercy let out a sharp warning bark. Amara's breath raced, but her voice stayed firm. "You fire that taser. You're the one starting the violence." Rickson stepped closer. "You people always make things harder than they have to be." "You people." 2 words like a blade slicing into already cracked air. Amara didn't respond. She didn't have to. Everything was already clear. They weren't officers doing their job. They were 2 men trying to prove dominance by breaking a woman who refused to kneel. Then, another click from Renaer. Taser raised. Rickson raised his gun. And then, a shout from a window across the street. "Hey, I'm filming this!" A neighbor, an older man, voice trembling but firm. Both Renaer and Rickson froze. Their eyes widened, panic creeping in. Amara exhaled, her first breath of relief. She lowered her hand, eyes still locked on theirs. "Put your weapons down," she said, not begging, commanding, "or this footage will make you famous." Rickson was the first to back away, muttering curses. Renaer hesitated, then slowly lowered the taser. In that moment, when they realized they had lost, not because they were outgunned, but because they'd lost control, Amara had won. No violence, no shouting, just standing firm, like a wall that wouldn't bend to arrogance. The next morning, Amara sat by the kitchen window, a cup of cold coffee in hand. On the TV screen, the local news replayed the cell phone video recorded by Mr. Martin, the neighbor who had shouted, "I'm filming this," the day before. The clip was under a minute long, blurry and shaky, but clear enough to show Rickson drawing his gun, Renaer raising a taser, and a black woman standing between her dogs, calm, not threatening, not out of control. The reporter read quickly, "The footage has gone viral overnight, raising questions about potential misuse of authority by officers from the Eastgate precinct." The woman in question, identified as Amara Briggs, is a retired Navy SEAL who moved to the neighborhood last year. Amara turned off the TV. She knew this wouldn't stop at social media. She'd known it the moment she saw the look in Renaer's eyes as he raised the taser, not just anger, but hatred. A man like that doesn't walk away quietly. Her phone rang. An unknown number. She hesitated for a second, then answered. "Ms. Briggs?" A male voice, calm, rehearsed, speaking. "This is Sergeant Holloway from the Department's Office of Professional Standards. We've received a use of force complaint involving you and 2 of our officers. I'm calling to inform you that an internal review has been opened." Amara paused for a few seconds. "Let me guess, I'm the one under review?" The voice on the other end hesitated. "We're reviewing all parties involved, ma'am. Standard procedure when a black woman stands her ground and lives. To tell about it?" Amara cut him off. Her tone wasn't sharp, but it was ice cold. "Ma'am, I assure you, this is a neutral investigation." Neutral. The word echoed in Amara's mind like a drill instructor's whistle. She'd heard it 1,000 times in uniform, from desk-bound officials citing standard protocols in investigations that never led to justice. "Noted," she said curtly. "Let me know if you need a written statement. We'll be in touch, and Ms. Briggs, please refrain from discussing this with media." "Wasn't planning to," she replied, then hung up. Amara leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the backyard where Chaos and Mercy lay beneath a tree. They didn't understand what had just happened. They never questioned procedures or internal affairs. They just reacted when she tensed up, when her pulse sped up, when her grip on the leash wasn't fear, but instinct, honed by too many years of knowing what comes next. At 3 p.m., a police department vehicle parked in front of her house. A woman stepped out, no uniform. Gray shirt, badge clipped to her belt, hair pulled back, face unreadable. "Detective Lee Darnell," she said when Amara opened the door. "I didn't request a meeting. I'm not here to investigate," Darnell replied. "I'm here because I served too. I saw the footage, and I don't believe you initiated that violence." Amara tilted her head. "Then why are you here?" Darnell pulled a small USB drive from her pocket. "You should see this. Patrol car footage from yesterday." Official report says both officers claimed a camera malfunction, but I recovered a temp backup. Amara frowned. "She took the USB. I'm not supposed to share this," Darnell added. "If they find out, I could lose my job. But if I don't, you could lose more than that." Amara nodded silently. Darnell turned to leave. But just before stepping off the porch, she looked back. "They're not going to stop, Briggs. But if you hold your ground, I've got your back." The door closed behind her. Amara stared at the USB in her hand. A piece of evidence. A sign that truth still had a chance. She turned to look at Chaos and Mercy. Their ears perked up, dark brown eyes tracking her every move. "Looks like we're not done yet," she said, and she was right. They weren't. Amara Briggs was not someone who trusted easily, but even less was she the kind of woman to sit around waiting for someone else to do what needed to be done. As soon as the door closed behind Detective Darnell, she powered on her laptop, plugged in the USB, and opened the video file. It took less than 90 seconds to understand why Darnell had risked so much. The patrol car footage showed everything, wide enough angle to capture it all. Rickson drawing his weapon first. No threatening move from Amara, no aggressive behavior from the dogs. She stood firm, both hands gripping the leashes, body tense like a drawn bowstring, but silent. Renaer entered the frame later, reaching for his taser as Rickson visibly lost control. No verbal warning, no request for medical assistance, no procedure, just power and abuse. Amara copied the entire video to her personal drive, then opened a new browser tab and started combing through public records, officer profiles, internal complaint logs, and civilian-run watchdog databases on law enforcement misconduct. Line by line, she typed, "Officer Rickson, Eastgate Precinct. Prior complaints?" The search results loaded in 5 seconds. 2017. Accused of excessive force during a stop and frisk involving a 16-year-old boy. Suspended 3 days. 2019. Complaint for racial slurs during an arrest at a gas station. Case dismissed for lack of verifiable evidence. 2022. Latina woman alleged he threatened her with a firearm during a traffic stop. Case lost in paperwork. Amara raised her eyebrows. Rickson wasn't untrained. He was protected. The kind of cop system shield because he did what they didn't want to admit they needed. She typed again, "Officer Renaer, Eastgate Precinct, personnel record." Nothing public. She pivoted, logged into a classified military transition platform, one she still had access to from her SEAL discharge profile. Renaer, military background, cross-reference law enforcement transition. One hit, Daniel Renaer, ex-CIA tactical unit, discharged 2016, reason not disclosed. He'd been part of a covert ops program in the Middle East, then vanished, only to resurface in a small-town police department. No academy history, no official training logs. Everything about his personnel file was scrubbed squeaky clean. Too clean. Too clean, Amara murmured. She opened another tab, posted a short inquiry on a veterans-only message board. Anyone recognize the name Daniel Renaer, ex-CIA, discharged 2016. Need context, off record. 5 minutes later, a reply popped up from a user tagged Orion74. We crossed paths, didn't end well. He ran ops off the books, got burned. Disappeared after a mission went sideways. Rumor says he sold out his own asset. Stay away. Amara leaned back. The picture sharpened. Renaer wasn't just a rogue cop. He was a relic from a failed shadow war, now using the civilian system to rewrite his story, or to keep feeding a power complex the CIA stripped from him. She saved all the data, encrypted it, then messaged her sister Gina, a cybersecurity expert at a private security firm, need help verifying a backdoor identity, sending encrypted files. Priority, Gina called immediately. Don't say anything over the phone, she warned. This guy knows how to erase footprints. If you've touched him, He'll know. Amara looked out the window. Chaos lay in the yard, head slightly raised, sensing something was off. Then I guess it's time he knows I'm watching too. That night, Amara sat alone in the darkened living room, the glow of her laptop screen the only light in the room. Someone like Renaer, born and trained in shadows, would stop at nothing to extinguish a light like this. But this time, the light was coming from the one place he never expected. A woman, a former Navy SEAL, a survivor, and she had no intention of staying silent. The phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Gina Morgan jolted awake, fumbling for the screen on her desk. Eyes still adjusting to the glare, she read the display. Unlisted number. Unknown. Caller. As a cybersecurity engineer, Gina never answered unidentified calls, but something in her gut told her this wasn't one to ignore. She picked up, said nothing. There was silence. Then a low, steady, male voice. "Stop digging, Ms. Morgan. You don't want to be part of this." Click. The call ended. No number, no trace, just a threat, delivered like a scalpel to the spine. 1 hour later, Amara was at Gina's apartment. She brought chaos and mercy. No drawn-out explanations, just one line: "We're being watched." Gina recounted the call and pulled up her system logs. Her supposedly impenetrable firewall had been pinged a few hours earlier, traced to a cloaked proxy. Not breached, but breached enough to watch, enough to warn. Amara stood silently behind her sister, eyes locked on the screen. She recognized the pattern. "Backdoor reconnaissance," she said. "He's testing our awareness, checking how much we know." "And now he knows," Gina replied. "He knows we know." Amara nodded. "Then we hit first. They split the work." Gina loaded the gathered intel, video files, forged records, Renaer's background, into a secure offline device. She created 3 backups, double encrypted with algorithms she coded herself. Amara made one encrypted call to Darnell. A 1-minute exchange was enough for the detective to understand. Renaer just moved first. Darnell's voice dropped. "Then we release before he scrubs it all." Amara answered darkly. "He won't just scrub data, he'll scrub people." By dawn, Amara hadn't slept. She stood on Gina's balcony, watching the empty street, lit only by flickering street lamps. Chaos lay beside her, alert. Mercy sat by the door like a bodyguard on standby. Amara whispered, "I should have known. He never forgets." A name surfaced in her memory. A mission years ago. A SEAL team had unintentionally exposed an illegal CIA operation in North Africa. The fallout was swift. She never learned who the commander was, only that he'd been burned. His name erased, his trail buried. Now she knew. It was Renaer, and his choice to land in Eastgate, a sleepy town with a complacent police department, was no accident. He'd built a new shell, a legal version of the power he'd once wielded, and now, under threat, he would kill to protect it. A.M. Amara stepped into a battered repair shop on the city's outskirts, the domain of the one person she trusted. For situations like this, Curtis Tech Harland, former military engineer, specialist in off-the-record devices for operations that never made it into official logs. The moment he saw her, he sighed. "Trouble again?" Amara tossed a USB onto the table. "I need a live-feed data transmitter. Full encryption, non-traceable, cache." "Now!" Curtis gave a dry chuckle. "You only show up when things are about to blow." "It's not blowing up," she said. "I'm about to end it." That night, Gina received a message from an anonymous source. Attached, a video clip, longer than the one she had, footage from Rickson's body cam, previously unreleased. Right before Rickson pulled his gun, a whisper crackled over his radio. "Make it look like a threat. Get it on tape." Gina froze. Her hands trembled slightly. She sent the clip straight to Amara. On the other end of the screen, Amara clenched her fists. She looked at Chaos and Mercy. Her eyes sharpened, colder than steel. Game over. 11:47 p.m. A moonless night. The back door of Eastgate Police Department clicked open with a breath-soft whisper. No sirens, no flashing red lights, no footsteps. Just the shadow of a woman and two dogs, slipping through the narrow gap like phantoms. Amara Briggs moved without a sound. She knew every blind spot on the cameras, every infrared sensor cycle, and the exact moment the night officer left his desk to make coffee. Not luck. It was thanks to a blueprint Darnell had quietly pulled from the department's intranet, and to 15 years of experience operating in places far more hostile than this. Mercy hugged the wall. Chaos moved parallel, barely touching ground. Basement. Room 3B. The server room. Amara crouched low, pulling a black USB from her coat pocket. The encrypted drive Gina had prepared, packed with everything. Body cam footage, forged orders, fake CIA papers, federal black budget transfers, all of it 15 minutes. That's all she needed to upload the data to the secure cloud Darnell had prepped. 15 minutes, a lifetime in missions like this. Half the lights in the server room flicked on. Amara hadn't touched the switch. She knew it had motion sensors. Darkness was her cover. She slid the drive into the main server port. The screen lit up. Lines of code began to scroll. Countdown, 900 seconds. 100, 899. Chaos lay still near the door, ears alert, body like carved stone. Mercy circled the racks, sensing something off. Amara watched the progress bar. 7%, 11%, 16%. Footsteps, heavy. Voices. She didn't stop. She couldn't. Gina had built a failsafe. If the upload didn't complete in 10 minutes and Amara was captured, the files would automatically go to 7 independent newsrooms and an external team of investigators already on standby. But Amara didn't just want the files sent, she wanted to be there when they detonated. 6%, 41%. The basement door opened. A deep voice rumbled. Patrol says someone tripped the external sensor. East door. Amara ducked low. She signaled chaos. Silence. A single hand gesture. The dog stopped breathing like its heart paused, too. 2 officers entered. One had a flashlight. The other clutched a Glock. They joked casually, unaware, until they noticed the glow from the server room. Huh. Who's working this late? The one with the light stepped closer. Amara waited. Let them walk past the rack, and the moment the beam swept across her sleeve, she struck. A lightning-fast sweep dropped the first one flat. Chaos launched forward like a storm, clamping onto the second man's arm before he could pull the trigger. The gun skittered across the concrete. Amara pinned the first man by the neck, eyes locked. Shut your mouth. Now. He trembled. Neither of them fought back. Not after seeing Chaos, teeth red, standing guard. Amara dragged them to the corner, zip-tied their wrists, gagged them with cloth. Not out of kindness, she whispered. You'll need your mouth to testify. Later. 72%, 80%. An alarm blared upstairs. Unauthorized access. Secure the basement. They'd discovered her. Minutes left. Amara locked the server room door and turned to Chaos and Mercy. Hold. No retreat. They growled low, fearless, unflinching. Just like their handler. Bang. The door shook. 3%. 95%. Hold! She shouted. Gunfire. Glass shattered. A scream of metal. Amara rolled under a control desk. A bullet zipped past her ear and punched into concrete. She didn't flinch. Her eyes were on the screen. 100%. The drive glowed green. Upload complete. She yanked it free, tucked it into a hidden pocket inside her vest, then looked straight into the ceiling camera. Justice is off the hard drive. It lives in the cloud now. Minutes later, Amara, Chaos, and Mercy broke through a side ventilation shaft, slid down a narrow corridor, and vanished into the night. Inside, alarms still howled, but the storm had already left the building. Out there, across the digital, sky, millions of data packets began to unpack and spread, and nothing could stop them now. The next morning, not even 6 a.m., and all of America was already on fire. On Twitter, Amara Briggs shot straight to the top of the national trends. Overnight, clips from leaked body cam footage, snapshots of CIA documents, and federal black budget transactions flooded every social platform. No one, from casual users to seasoned journalists, could ignore the story that was equal parts breathless and infuriating. A black former Navy SEAL provoked, assaulted, and framed by 2 white officers, who fought back with the very tools the system once trained her to use: skill, patience, and lethal precision. Within 12 hours, nearly every major network paused regular programming to cover Amara's story, not because they admired her, but because they had no choice. One line from the body cam footage brought the nation to a standstill. "You don't belong here," Rickson said, hand on his weapon. Amara's voice, cold as steel. "I belong wherever the truth needs to be heard." Then chaos growled, and the world changed color. At Eastgate Police Department, the air hung thick like gasoline waiting for a spark. Young officers exchanged nervous glances. Some shut their computers, others quietly packed their desks. They knew they weren't Renaer, but they also knew that anyone who laughed while he set up innocent people was now standing at the edge of a cliff. In the second-floor conference room, Captain Renaer stood frozen in front of the CNN feed. His hair clung to his temples with sweat. The sharp gleam in his eyes was gone, replaced by panic, not because he was exposed, but because he thought he'd erased every trace. What he didn't count on was people. Gina, the tech genius, who dug through walls. Darnell, the internal affairs detective who went against the entire precinct. And Amara, who never needed a uniform to stand for justice. That morning, the U.S. Department of Justice issued an emergency order. Immediate suspension of Renaer and all implicated officers. The FBI launched a formal investigation. At 11:42 a.m., as Renaer stepped out for a clarification press briefing, he was met by over 100 reporters and cameras. From behind him, Darnell emerged, holding up a live arrest warrant to the rolling news feed. "Captain Renaer," she said slowly and clearly, "you are under arrest for evidence tampering, defamation of a civilian, destruction of agency data, and violations of national security." Renaer froze. For a moment, he considered fleeing, but the cameras were rolling. No one to protect him now. And for the first time in his life, he understood what the silence of justice feels like when it becomes a weapon of reckoning. In the week that followed, everything submerged was dragged into the light. Renaer had once served in a rogue overseas CIA unit. His personnel file was falsified. His move into local law enforcement was a cover to clean up past threats, and Amara was one of them. Darnell released a 300-page report. One line echoed across the country. "Amara Briggs is not a disruptor. She is the final warning this system needed to hear." And Amara? She declined every interview, rejected every talk show invitation, turned down a 7-figure book deal from the New York Times. Instead, she appeared once in a single live stream filmed by Gina. Amara sat on a wooden porch chair. Mercy rested her head on Amara's leg. Chaos slept by her side. She spoke just once. "I didn't do this to be famous. I did this because no one should have a gun pointed at them just for the color of their skin." No edits, no soundtrack. The country went silent. This story didn't end with a government statement. It ended with a verdict on the entire system. And for the first time, that system finally opened its eyes. 1 month after Captain Renaer's sentencing, Amara Briggs quietly appeared before a special city council, not as a witness, not as a victim, but as a guest speaker, invited to help advise on the complete restructuring of the city's internal affairs system. Inside the large hearing room, her audience wasn't just city council members. There were representatives from the Department of Justice, leaders from minority communities, and a group of young officers, people who never thought they'd one day hear a black veteran stand before them and ask, "I'm not here to retell the past. I'm here to ask you this. If you were the one being wrongfully held at gunpoint, who would stand for you?" No one answered, but everyone understood. That question was the foundation of what comes next. Amara's life didn't return to what it was, but it also stopped being a battlefield. She left Eastgate, chose a quiet town near the northern Colorado woods, where the earth still smelled of pine and sunlight didn't pass through layers of red tape. There she bought a small old cabin, planted vegetables behind the house, and began training service dogs, not for combat but for veterans with PTSD. She named the program Silent Dogs for Loud Wounds. And strangely enough, those who had once held guns, seen blood and betrayal, could finally sleep again when a dog like Chaos lay at the foot of their bed. Gina, Amara's younger sister, was now a tech journalist for an investigative publication. She never used her real name, but anyone who followed the Renaer case knew that nameless girl was the one who cracked open the door to the collapse of an entire web of power. Every month, Gina visited Amara. They didn't say much, but between them, there was nothing left to resent. Because when the world turned its back, they had chosen to hold on to each other. And Chaos and Mercy, they weren't just symbols anymore. They became part of a special training program at the Denver Police Department, a new model for K-9s trained not to intimidate with violence, but to protect with precision. The story of how these two dogs could read Amara's body language, respond to silent cues, and never attack despite provocation was now taught in ethics courses across more than 30 states. On YouTube, a short clip from one of those sessions showed Amara standing beside Chaos, saying just one sentence, "You don't need to bark loud to be heard. You just need to stand where the truth is." The clip was only 18 seconds, but it reached over 9 million views. And Fort Collins, the park where it all began, where one morning Amara was stopped, questioned, threatened, nearly lost her future. For walking her dogs, the town rebuilt the area. No monument, no ceremony, just a single bronze plaque beside the narrow path into the park. It bore one simple line: "Dignity is not granted. It is claimed and then lived." No name, no logo, no keynote speaker. Because they understood. People like Amara don't need a spotlight. They just need justice bright enough for everyone to walk in without having to bow their heads. Amara didn't write a book. She didn't sign a documentary deal. She didn't accept invitations to speak at universities or human rights forums. She quietly returned to the life she had longed for. Not because she wanted to forget, but because she now understood what was worth remembering. Not everyone survives a confrontation with power. Not everyone gets the chance to tell their side of the truth, and fewer still manage to hold on to their dignity in the moment it's easiest to lose it. But she did, and that's why people still speak her name, even though she no longer stands on the front lines. The town where Amara was once stopped and held at gunpoint no longer looks at her with suspicion, not because they know who she is, but because they no longer need to. A black woman walking two large dogs is no longer a scene to watch. She's just part of the neighborhood, and sometimes that kind of ordinary is exactly what justice had taken, and what she fought so hard to win back. In a quiet corner of the park, an elderly woman walks with her granddaughter. The little girl points to a bronze plaque and asks, "Grandma, who's this sign for?" The woman smiles, bends down, and reads aloud, "Dignity is not granted. It is claimed and then lived." Then she answers, without hesitation, "It belongs to someone who didn't need to put her name on it, because her name was already written in what she did." This isn't a story of a hero. It's the story of a woman who once stayed silent because no one would listen, and eventually made the whole system go quiet because she no longer needed to raise her voice. She didn't seek the light, because that light came from her. If you believe justice doesn't come from shouting but from unshakable resolve, share this story, and if you haven't yet, subscribe. Not for us, but so voices like Amara's are never forgotten.